As tensions were simmering in New York, Michael was in Chicago for the Walters trial. Strike Force prosecutor Edward McDonald flew to Chicago to meet with Michael and Chicago law enforcement. After meeting, they decided to break for lunch. An agent gave their deli order to Michael, who casually got up to get the food. Shocked because Michael was supposed to be in custody, Ed McDonald said, "What's he doing?" "He's getting our food," an agent replied. It turned out that Michael had been living with Cammie and their baby in a condo in Chicago as he awaited trial, and all that time was to be counted toward his sentence. Incredulous, McDonald decided that something needed to change. When Michael returned with the food, McDonald pressed him for information about other Mafia figures. "I don't understand," Michael demurred, insisting that was not part of his cooperation deal. "Let me explain the facts of life to you," McDonald responded. "You have to give up wise guys." Michael, confident that he had negotiated a good deal for himself, smiled and gestured toward the Chicago agents. "These guys will take care of me," he said. "Take 'em," McDonald snapped. The agents followed orders, and Michael spent the night in jail. The next day, he entertained the group with funny stories about his night in a holding cell with drunks and low-level street hoods. But Michael also saw the light. That's when he began to cooperate in earnest with McDonald. Unlike the typical wise guy who had never been out of Brooklyn, Michael knew how to handle himself in a variety of situations. Guys in his crew were familiar with his patter. They called it Michael Fever. He had been the Mafia's emissary to important meetings throughout the country. He knew who the bosses were and what their major operations were in Chicago, Los Angeles, Phoenix, and Washington, D.C. McDonald, a veteran organized crime prosecutor, was surprised to learn from Michael that there was even a Mafia presence in Denver, the Smaldone brothers, who operated out of an Italian restaurant there. Michael also persuaded 4 co-defendants to plead guilty, assuring them that he would cover their lawyers' fees. He didn't. As time went on, he provided information about other men close to Sonny, but never had to testify against them. Prosecutors might have been impressed with Michael's deep knowledge of the workings of the Mafia, but street detectives saw a guy who used his father's name and the mob's backing to get what he wanted, and then turned on his friends when they were no longer useful to him. Worse, they saw a man who seemed to be in love with himself. "I used to ask him, 'Do you have a lot of mirrors in your house?'" one detective said. Michael later insisted that the only thing he did was testify against Walters, who was convicted, only to have his conviction overturned on appeal, and that it didn't matter, because Walters was not a good fella. As such, he wasn't testifying against one of his own. Nobody cared about Norby, he insisted. In fact, Michael had been lucky. The organized crime strike force was disbanded around that time, and he didn't have to testify in any other cases. He did, however, manage to get a time limit set on his cooperation deal, something that is unusual, so that he would not have to cooperate with other investigators coming his way. Tina, though, was appalled. "That's not the way we were brought up," she said. "Why do that to people that didn't hurt you? I can love 'em till I die, but I can't forgive 'em, because it's too huge. I'm hurting every day." Michael's betrayal was so huge that Colombo boss Carmine the Snake Persico ordered him killed. Persico was so angry that he will go to any length to kill Franzese, informant Scarpa told FBI agents. Sonny didn't challenge the order. Michael wasn't just turning on everyone who had made him who he was. He was working on a potential movie deal about it and was scheduled to come back to New York to promote it. As deeply respected as Sonny was on the street, that was simply too much. Persico ordered that Sonny's operations be distributed among other capos. Sonny didn't threaten to go to war or publicly object, knowing his crew remained loyal to him. But he didn't take it lightly. He refused to give up the big moneymakers. Persico, who was having his own problems with criminal indictments at the time, didn't push back. Michael got out of prison in May 1989, after serving only a fraction of his 10-year sentence, and was placed on 5 years probation. He moved to California with Cammie and bought her family members' houses, drove around in a Porsche, or sometimes a Mercedes, and began work on his memoir. Back on Long Island, his ex-wife lost the old Brookville mansion. New York investigators said that it was just a matter of time before he would be killed, but men closer to Sonny were convinced that Sonny persuaded Michael, who had millions squirreled away from the gas tax scheme, to make a multi-million-dollar payment to the commission. He also agreed to stay out of New York.